of this course. Hey guys, Hussein and welcome to YouTube channel. So in this video, I'm going to be making you the Redux Toolkit and RTK query monsters. So there are a lot of great resources out there which teaches the RTK query and also the Redux Toolkit. So why you should spend your time watching this course? So to convince you, in the first part of the course, we are going to be learning about the Redux Toolkit and then the RTK query. But in the second part, we are going to be building two amazing, and I'm talking about a huge industry level projects. So I already built, and the first project is already on my YouTube channel, but the second project will take, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 days. So by the time you're watching this video, the second project will be already on my YouTube channel. So now let me show you where you can find these projects and how to become a MERN stack monster. So you don't have to go any further, you just have to search Hussein Web Dev on YouTube, and it's going to bring you to my YouTube channel right here. And I have a lot of amazing courses if you wanted to check it out. So here you can see we have this MERN stack project course, and this is the entire project. And by the way, if you want to become a MERN stack developer, here I already have a course on that. Now let me just show you that course. So you can just watch this course and it's going to just make you a JavaScript monster. Okay, so this course offers every single thing that you have to know about JavaScript. But anyways, back to our topic. Now we are talking about the MERN stack project. So if you click on this playlist, it's going to bring you to this playlist right here, which teaches every single thing about the Redux Toolkit and RTK queries. So the first thing which you have to do is that you have to watch this video which you are currently watching, and then you have to jump straight into this project right here. So the duration of this project is about 15 hours, and it's gonna make you a superstar in MERN stack. And I'm already working on the MERN stack movies application, which will be launched, I don't know, maybe in 2 or 3 days. So stay tuned, and now let's learn what in the world is a Redux, and then we are going to be jumping into the Redux Toolkit. So we are not going to be using the Redux code in this course, but I just want to give you a quick overview of what a Redux is. So Redux is an open source JavaScript library for managing the state, and here the keyword is the state. So if I ask you a question like what is a state in React.js, so your answer will probably be like a use reducer, they use context, they use state, and all of that kind of stuff. So Redux is an open source JavaScript library which allows us, or which help us to work with the state management in a predictable way. And it is commonly used with libraries like React.js for building the UIs, but can also be used with other JavaScript frameworks and libraries. So a lot of people think that React.js and Redux Toolkit are totally the same thing, but they are not. And I can totally understand like why they think that way, because there are countless courses which teaches React.js and Redux.js in the same video or in the same course. So that's why these people think that React.js and Redux Toolkit or Redux is totally the same thing, but they are not. Okay, so that was just a quick overview of what a Redux is, but now let's talk about something called the Redux Toolkit. So Redux Toolkit is the official, opinionated, batteries included toolset for efficient Redux development. Wait, what? Redux development? What are you talking about, Hussein? Okay, so now let me tell you what's the difference between Redux Toolkit and just a Redux core. Redux core makes the state management easy, and yeah, it makes it easy, but you're gonna have to learn a lot of things, and you're gonna have to also write a lot of boilerplate code, which is not going to be necessary. Now we are using the Redux Toolkit. Okay, so Redux Toolkit makes the Redux development easy to work with. Okay, so yeah, that was just a quick intro to what a Redux core is and also what a Redux Toolkit is, and that was just the differences between Redux core and also the Redux Toolkit. So now let's talk about how we are going to be using Redux and how Redux works. So I want you to imagine this component hierarchy for a second, and here you can see we have an app component right here, and we would have some sort of important data inside this app component, and we want this data inside this data component as well. So how in the world we are going to be doing that? I'm just asking you a question like how in the world we are going to be pushing this data which is inside the app component to this data component right here. So your answer will probably be like, first of all, we can also use the pros, and we can pass this data to the card component, then we have to pass it to the user component, then we have to pass it to this data component, and that will totally work. But here you can see we are repeating ourselves right here. Okay, so now let me just delete that. We are now repeating ourselves, and that's not a better practice. Well, some of you will also give me this answer that we can pass this data by using the context API API or by using the context. Yeah, we can totally do that by just using a context, and we can pass this data to any component that we like. But I want you to imagine for a second that you are working with, I don't know, Google or maybe the Facebook or some other headquarters, and they would have countless components. So for that, you're gonna have to use context API like countless times. But in Redux Toolkit, we are not doing that. In Redux Toolkit, we are going to be defining something called the store. You don't have to worry about what a store is. Let me just label that as a store. We are going to be creating a separate store outside from this component, and inside that store we are going to be placing all of our logic, and then we are going to be pushing our data or storing our data, or you can say the logic, or you can say the state initial state values. You can give it any name you like. Okay, so we are going to be first of all creating a store, then we are going to be storing some sort of a data inside the store, and then we will be able to pass this data to any of the component that we like. Like for instance, if I want to use this same data inside this data component, so I can totally pass it right here, or if I want to use it inside the header component, I can totally pass it right here, or if I want to use it in the car or in the time component or in the, I don't know. So you can reuse this data again and again. So this is how the Redux work, and this is what we are going to be learning throughout the course. Plus we are going to be also learning about a lot of different things, but not right now. So I want you to imagine this hierarchy, and we are going to be solving this problem by using our store. So before we get into the store, first of all, I want to make a setup, and I also want to show you the Redux Toolkit docs, and then we are going to be jumping into the store. So I want you to come to this link, which is called the redux.js.org, and it's going to bring you to the Redux core documentation right here. We are not going to be using that, but I want to show you something. So they are now calling themselves as a predictable state container for JavaScript apps. Okay, so if I just go a bit further, so we are going to be using these two packages right here throughout the course. The first one we have is a React Redux, and it's going to allow us to work with the React.js and also the Redux Toolkit. So this is just a binder for working with the React.js and also the Redux Toolkit. And the next package which we are going to be using is, you guessed it, we are going to be using the Redux Toolkit package. So now I want to show you something. So now if I click on this getting started button right here, so they are now officially recommending the Redux Toolkit. So it is now officially recommended approach to use the Redux Toolkit. Okay, so yeah, and by the way, here you can also see inside this main documentation in the installation page, they are also suggesting to install the Redux Toolkit. Redux Toolkit, not just a Redux core. Okay, so we are going to be using this command, and we are going to be also binding that with React.js. But first of all, I want you to just click on this Redux Toolkit, and it's going to bring us to the Redux Toolkit documentation right here. So say bye-bye to the Redux, and we are going to be working with the Redux Toolkit. Now I want to click on this getting started button right here, and here you can see they are now suggesting to use this Redux Toolkit. And now I'm going to just click on the quick start, or you know what, quick tutorial overview right here. Not this one. The quick start would be fine. We are going to be installing these two packages right here, but first of all, I want to make a setup for this course. So we are going to be first of all installing the React.js by using the Vite. So I'm going to just open my terminal inside my desktop right here. Let me just zoom in a bit so you guys can see everything a bit better. And here I'm going to be just placing this command. If I can expand that today, I'm going to be just passing this command right here, which is, you know, first of all, let me just rename that to something else. I'm going to just rename that to like my RDX would be fine. And now I'm going to just hit enter right here. But first of all, we are just creating a Vite project, and we are just naming that as my RDX. You can give it any name you like. And we are using the React template, not a Vue template, and also not an Angular template. We are using the React template, and this is what we are going to be doing. So now let me just hit enter right here, and now we have to go inside to that folder. So I'm going to just write a cd in my RDX, and I'm using a VS Code. So if you're using something else, you know, first of all, let me just show you all of the files and folders which we currently have right here. So here you can see it's going to give us that public and all of that files. And it will not give us that node modules folder because we have to install all of the packages for that. So I'm going to just write like npm I to install all of the packages inside that folder, and it's going to just install the React by using a Vite inside that folder. So everything is now successfully installed, and I'm using a VS Code. So I'm going to just write a code dot, and it's going to open my VS Code on the other screen. So now let me just grab that right here, and here you can see we have this folder structure right here, and I already assume that you guys already know these stuff. So I'm not going to explain all of that. So I'm going to just delete this public folder, and I'm gonna go ahead and go to the src folder. I'm gonna also delete this ss folder. We are going to be also deleting this app.css, and now let me just remove every single thing from this index.css. I'm gonna also remove every single thing from this app, and I'm gonna just use the RAFCE, and it's gonna just create this component for us. And now let me just go ahead and go to my main, and I'm going to just remove this React strict mode and also this React strict mode right here. Let me just remove that, save my file. Let's just go back, and this is how everything currently looks like. But now let me just run my project. So I'm going to be using npm run dev, so it's going to just run my project by using this port. Now let me just click on that, and here you can see it's going to just give us that app right here. Why is that? Because currently we just only have this app right here, so that's why we are now seeing this app. Okay, so yeah, that was the installation and cleaning up of Redux Toolkit. Oh, by the way, I forgot to install the Redux Toolkit and the React binder. Let me just do that. So first of all, we're going to have to install the Redux Toolkit for the state management, and also we are going to have to install the React Redux to work with React.js by using Redux. Okay, so now let me just click on this command, and now let me just open my terminal one more time, and I'm going to be just placing this command right here. So it's going to just install all of the packages, and everything is now successfully installed. So I'm going to be using npm run dev one more time, and now let me just show you my package.json. Okay, so here you can see it's going to install this Redux Toolkit and also this React Redux right here. Okay, so this is what we are going to be using throughout this course, and everything is looking okay. So enough about a setup and configuration. Now let's talk about a store. But before we get into the store, first of all, I want you to keep in mind one thing. Throughout the course, if I said Redux, I mean the Redux Toolkit. Okay, so I want you to just keep that in mind. So now let's talk about what a store is and why I should care about that. So a store is a central place where the state of your application is stored, and it can be created something called the configured store function, which I'm going to be showing you in a few seconds, and it holds the entire state tree of our application. So yeah, that was just a quick intro to what a store is. But now let's talk about how we are going to be creating a store. Well, to create a store, first of all, we're going to have to get the configure store function from the Redux Toolkit, and then we have to execute that function. And inside this function, we're going to be just passing our object, and inside this object as a property, we're going to have to pass the reducer, and here we are going to be passing a lot of reducers. Right now we are going to be just focusing on creating a store, and later we're going to be passing the slices and reducer and all of that kind of good stuff. So now let me just write some code, and then you will get to know what I'm talking about. So here, back to my project right here. Okay, so I'm going to just save that, save a byte to this one. Now let me just zoom in a bit right here. The first thing I want to do is that I want to create a separate folder right here. You can give it any name you like. A lot of people give it the name of Redux. You can totally give it the name of Redux if you wanted to, but in my case, I'm gonna just give it a name of like app because it was mentioned in the documentation. So I'm gonna just also use the official documentation. Okay, so now inside this folder, we are going to be creating a separate file. I'm gonna just give it a name of like store and then .js, because currently we are working with JavaScript files, so we have to name it as a JavaScript or extension as a JavaScript. So now inside there, if you wanted to create a store, first of all, we're gonna have to import the configure store function from where? From the Redux Toolkit. And now we have to execute this function, and inside this function we're going to have to pass our object right here. Let me just pass the object, and inside this object we're going to be passing the property of reducer, reducer, and the value will be just set to the object. Okay, now we have to just export this so that we can totally use that in other files. So I'm going to just write like export, and I'm going to just give it the name of store right here. So yeah, this is how we're going to be creating a store, and that's totally okay and totally easy to work with. The first thing which you have to do is that we have to import the configure store, and then we have to execute that, and then we have to just pass the reducer as a property, and value will be set to totally empty object right here. Okay, so we just have to export that so that we can totally use it in other files. So yeah, this is how we are going to be creating our store. But now let's talk about how we are going to be using this store in our React.js. So we already learned about how we are going to be creating a store, but now let's talk about how we are going to be providing that store to the React.js. So the first thing which you have to do is that we have to just import the store, and then we also have to import the provider component from the React Redux. Okay, so once we import that, then we are going to be just wrapping our entire application from this component, which is the provider component, and here we are going to be passing our store, and then our entire application will have access to our store. So now let me just do that. Okay, so I'm going to just close this one, and now let me just go ahead and go to my main component, right, or main file right here. The first thing we would do is that I'm going to just grab the store from where, let's just just go, not the Bible or Bible, let's just go ahead and go to our app, and then we have to go ahead and go to the store. So we are going to be just grabbing the store first of all, and then we would also have to grab the provider from the React Redux. Okay, so now we successfully grab both of them, but now we have to use that. So the first thing which I want to do is that I wanted to wrap my entire application by using that provider component. Okay, so I'm going to just write a provider opening tag and closing tag. Now let me just hit enter right here, and let me just provide my app inside this provider component, and now we have to finally pass the store as a property, and value will be store. Okay, so now our entire application will have access to our store which we just created a few seconds ago. So yeah, that was just an intro to how to create a store and how we are going to be using that store inside our main component. So now let's talk about another essential component of Redux Toolkit, which is called the slices. So what is a slice and why you should care about that? So a slice is a piece of store state and the corresponding reducer logic to update that specific state. So slices are a way to organize our Redux store by breaking it down into more smaller and more manageable parts. And yeah, I know that sounds a bit scary and confusing. That's because it has a lot of buzzwords right here, but now let me just break all of them down for you. Okay, so here is the analogy. So I want you to imagine that you have a big cake and you want to cut that specific cake into more smaller and more manageable pieces. So each smaller piece is like a slice of the cake. In the context of Redux Toolkit, a slice is like a smaller part of your application overall state and the instruction on how to change or update that specific part. Okay, so yeah, that's as simple as I can go. Okay, so yeah, that was a slices, but now the question is how we are going to be creating a slice. The syntax is looking a bit scary. No, it's not. Here you can see the first thing which we are doing is that we are grabbing the create slice function or method, whatever you want to call that, and then we are executing that, and inside there we are passing the name property and we are providing some sort of a value for that name. In this case I'm working with the counter, so I just name it as a counter. If you are working like, I don't know, maybe if you are working with a theme changer, or I don't know, if you are working some other slice, so you would name it totally differently. And I want you to keep in mind that this is totally important. Okay, so you're gonna have to pass the name, some sort of a specific name to that. Now let's talk about the initial value and the reducer and also the actions. So first of all, let's talk about what is the initial state. Initial state, as the name suggests, is going to be the initial data of your state. Okay, so what do I mean by that? In this case, I want you to imagine the initial state to be as your use state. So in the use state, you can pass anything. You can pass the object, you can pass the, I don't know, you can pass the string, you can pass some sort of a number or arrays or nested object or nested arrays or anything like that. In my case, I'm currently working with the counter, so that's why I just specify the value, I mean like the property of value and the value of 0 right here. So you can totally give it the name of like counter banana, you can give it any name you like, and then you can also specify any value that you like right here. Okay, so yeah, that was the initial state. So now let's talk about what in the world are reducers and why you should care about that. So reducers are like the instruction on what to do with each slice of the cake, and they define how the information in a particular slice can be changed or updated. So that's what reducers are, and here you can see we are now telling how to change this data right here, like how to change this value. So first of all, we have a method of increment and then we have a method of decrement. These are something called the actions. Now you might be saying like, Hussein, what in the world are actions? Now let me just discuss what our actions are. So actions are like a request or the commands you give to change a specific slice of a cake. For example, you can give it the command of like eat a bite, and that instruct how to take a bite from that slice right here. Okay, so here you can see we are now telling how to change this initial state value. So you can think about this initial state is like the use state, and you can think about what do we call it, these actions as like the set and the state name. That was an awful analogy. So here you can see we are just providing some sort of an initial value, and then we are going to be telling our reducer like how to change this value. So if somebody click on the increment button, so we are going to be just adding 1 to it, if somebody click on the decrement button, so we are going to be just removing one from it. So finally we are just exporting our actions right here. So currently we just have these two actions, but if you have like a lot of them, so we are going to be exporting a lot of them. Okay, so here I want you to imagine, I'm gonna just tell you that in a few seconds. And then finally we are just exporting the reducer from our counter slice. So now let me just write some code, and then you will get to know what I'm talking about. So here you can see back to our project, and now let me just go ahead and go to my app folder right here. Let me just zoom in a bit, and inside this app folder we are going to be creating a separate folder. You can give it any name you like, but if you want to follow the same convention as the docs shows, so for that we're going to have to pass the features, and inside this feature we are going to be introducing some feature. So inside that I'm going to be just creating a separate folder. And by the way, you don't even have to create a separate folder, you don't even have to create a features folder, but that was recommended in the docs, so that's why I'm following that. So now here you can see we are going to be attaching the feature of counter, so that's why I'm going to just name this folder as a counter. And inside this folder we are going to be creating a separate file, and I'm going to name that to like counter slice right here. And by the way, this is also a community convention. You can give it banana, you can give it any name you like, but in my case, first of all, we're going to have to pass the feature or the slice name, and then finally at the end we're going to have to pass the slice. Okay, so I'm going to just hit enter right here, and yeah, that was a lot of community conventions right here. So now let me just go back, and the first thing which you have to do is that we have to import or create slice from where? From the Redux Toolkit. So we are going to be grabbing that by using the named export, and then we are going to have to just call this function right here, and inside this function we're going to be passing our object, and inside this object we're going to have to pass some sort of a name for our slice. So in my case, I'm currently working with the counter, so I'm going to just give it the name of counter right here. Okay, so now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to pass some sort of an initial state or the initial value, whatever you want to call that. So I'm going to just write an initial state, and here we're going to be passing the object, and inside this object we're going to be passing the value. You can give it the name of like count if you wanted to, but in my case I'm going to just name it as the value. Okay, and the initial value will be set to 0. You can totally write your code like this, and in some cases you'll see a lot of engineers use these conventions right here. So they will grab the functionality from the initial state, then they will create another initial state variable outside from there, and then they would pass this initial value inside there. They can copy and place it as a property and value, but they can also use the ES6 way to use just a name right here. Okay, because the name and the values are totally the same, so they can write their code like this. But in my case we just have only small sets, so I'm going to just cut that from here, and now let me just place that right here once again. And now this is how we are going to be passing the initial value to there. And now let's talk about the reducers. So here we are going to be passing the reducers, and inside this reducer we are going to be passing the action. So how we are going to be changing this data? So the first thing which I want to do is that I want to create the increment function right here, and you can create it by using the function result keyword if you wanted to. But in my case I'm going to just write a increment right here, and then we're going to be grabbing our state.value, and it's going to be equals to 1. And now a lot of people will say like, Hossein, what the hell are you doing? You are accessing the state and you are directly mutating your state. Like, what is going on? And this is something called the immer library, which I'm going to show you in a few seconds. And now let me just write a comma, and then we're going to be also creating a decrement function as well. Now let me just pass my state right here, and we're going to be just writing a state.value -1 in this case. So what is going on in this area? We are now accessing our state directly. Like here you can see we have the value inside the state, and we are now accessing our state directly, and we are now mutating or changing, whichever name you prefer. We are now mutating or changing our state directly, and that's not allowed in React.js because it's gonna work behind the scene, but it will not re-render your application. That's a big no-no in React.js. But in Redux Toolkit, it uses something called the immer library behind the scenes, so we can totally access our state, and then we can totally mutate our state directly right here. Okay, So yeah, this is how we are going to be creating first of all, let me just say that once again, this is how we are going to be grabbing the slice. This is how we are going to be using the slice. First of all, we have to pass the name, then we have to pass some sort of initial value to that, then we have to provide the reducers, and inside these reducers we're going to have to pass our actions right here. And now finally, let me just export that. So I'm going to just write like export const counter slice when now equals to this counter slice right here. So that's totally okay, but we would also have to export this increment action and also this decrement actions right here. And to do that, first of all, we're going to have to go a bit back, and now let me just write like export const, and we're going to be just exporting the increment and also a decrement from our counter slice dot actions. And please notice these are something called the actions with the s, not just action. Let me just remove this s right here. Not just the action, these are plural. I can't pronounce this name, that's why I'm not doing that. These are plural, not a singular. Yeah, English isn't my first language, so that's why it is a bit difficult for me. And now let me just write export default, and let's just export our counter slice dot reducer. Okay, so that's everything we need for now. This is how we are going to be creating our slice. But now how we are going to be binding this slice or this logic to our store. Now let's just learn about that. So we successfully create our slice, but now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to add that slice reducer to our store. So the first thing which you want to do is that we are going to be grabbing our store, we are going to be grabbing our reducer, and inside this reducers, or reducer property, we are going to be passing the property of anything. You can give it the name of anything you want, but in my case I'm just giving it the name of counter, and we're now passing our reducer to that. So that's why it will totally work. So now let me just write our code, and then you will get to know what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna just go ahead and go to my store once again, and here what I want to do is that I'm gonna be grabbing my counter reducer right here. You can give it any name you like, and we are going to be first of all grabbing that from the feature, then go to the counter, and then go to the counter slice. Now let me just copy that, and here we can give it any name you like as a property, but in my case I'm going to just name it as a counter, and here we are going to be passing our counter slice. So everything is now successfully done, but the last part is missing, which is how we are going to be attaching this logic to our React components. And welcome to the final part of the Redux Toolkit. So now let's talk about how we are going to be using the Redux stat and action in the React components. So we are going to be using that by using the use selector hook and the use dispatch hook. It sounds a bit confusing and scary, but trust me, it's not. And then we're going to be also grabbing our actions right here, which is the increment and also a decrement. And then finally we are going to be using the use selector and the use dispatch. So now let's talk about what is the use selector and also the use dispatch. I don't want to confuse you. So the use selector hooks allows us to read the data from our Redux store, as simple as that. And the use dispatch function allows us to change that data which we are already reading by using this use selector. The dispatch function is used to send action to the store, triggering updates to application state. In simple terms, it lets you change the state of your Redux store from within your React component. So how in the world we are going to be doing that? And here you can see, first of all, we are going to be using the use selector to read some sort of a data from our store, and then we are going to be just executing the use dispatch. We are going to be just storing the in the dispatch function. And here we are going to be just passing our increment and also the decrement function right here, or action, whatever you want to call that. So now let me just write some code, and then you will get to know what I'm talking about. So now let me just go ahead and first of all create a component outside from this app component. Let me just zoom in a bit. We are going to be creating a component outside from this app component, and we are going to be creating that inside this src. So I'm going to just give it the name of like components, and inside these components we are going to be creating another component of counter.jsx. This is going to be our React component. So now if you want to use the Redux logic inside our component, the first thing which you have to do is that we have to grab the use selector. Let's just grab that like that. From where? From the Redux, not Redux, but the React and also the Redux library. So we're gonna also need the use dispatch hook as well, and let's just import our actions right here. So we're going to be importing our action from where? Let's just go ahead and go to our app component folder. Then we have to go ahead and go to the features, then we have to go to the counter, and inside this counter we are going to be getting our logic from this counter slice right here. Okay, so we are going to be just getting the increment and also a decrement action. Okay, so now let me just go back, and now let's just create some sort of a component right here. I'm gonna just give it the name of counter right here, and inside this component, let's just remove that. And the first thing which you have to do is that we have to read the data from the Redux store, or just a store, whatever you want to call that. So we are going to be reading our data by using the use selector, and inside there we are going to be passing our arrow function. So you can pass the regular function if you want it. In my case, I'm going to be passing the arrow function. So now let me just write a stat, and here we are going to be passing our reducer properties. So what do I mean by that? Here, if I just write a counter and then dot value from there, this looks a bit scary, like where in the world is this counter coming from? This counter is coming from, let's just go ahead and go to a store, and here you can see we have a counter property, and we are going to be reading our data from the stat and also the counter. That was the counter, but where is this value coming from? So now let me just go ahead and go to the slice, and here you can see we have the value right here of the initial stat. Okay, so yeah, here we are going to be first of all getting this data, and now let me just store it in some sort of a variable. So I'm going to just write like const count. You can give it any name you like, and then we are going to be changing, let me just write changing the data. Come on, changing, changing the data by sending actions to the store. You don't have to worry about this comment which I just wrote, but now let me just use the use dispatch function, and we are going to be storing there in the dispatch variable right here. Okay, so now first of all, let's just see, are we even getting the data from our store? Let me just save my file, and now let me just refresh that, and we are not getting the data, I guess because we are not even using, we are not using this component anywhere. So now let me just go ahead and go to my app, and now let me just render my component right here. So I'm going to be using the counter right here. Let's just copy that, and let me just remove all of that, and let's just use that right here. And here you can see we are now getting the value of 0 right here, which is totally a-okay. But now we can totally change that data by using this dispatch function. So I'm going to just cut this count from here, and I'm going to be creating h1 right here. Now let me just place this count inside that h1, and now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to create two buttons. So I'm going to be just creating a button. I'm going to just write a plus and then the minus right here, and I'm going to be also attaching the on click event handler on both of them, and we're going to be also passing the arrow function inside there. And here we're going to be passing the dispatch. What is the dispatch? Dispatch is a hook. Use dispatch is a hook, and it's gonna allows us to send our action. What is the action? Here you can see we have these actions right here, and based on their specific action we're going to be changing the data inside our store. So now let me just write my increment action right here, increment, and then I am going to be also writing a dispatch one more time, and here we're going to be also passing our decrement. But that's not cool. Why is that? Because these are functions. Now let me just show you that. Let's just go ahead and go to our slices, and here you can see this is a function, and also this is also a function. So now let me just execute both of them. So now let me just provide a parenthesis to that, and there you have it. That was the entire flow of the Redux toolkit. So now let me just save that, and here you can see it's going to give us these buttons right here. But if I click on this button, it's going to allow us to increment our counter, and if I click on this button, so it's going to allow us to decrement our counter right here. Okay, so yeah, that sounds a bit confusing, but trust me, it's not. If you just create a few actions, and if you just play around with that, so you will totally get it. And I did my best to show you every single thing about the Redux toolkit. So now let's talk about the RTK query. Welcome to the next section of this course. So in this section we are going to be learning about the RTK query. So what is the RTK query and why you should care about that? So RTK query, aka the RTK, is specially designed to simplify the data fetching, caching and state management for the API calls in React and Redux applications. And that was it about the RTK query. That's the only definition I can give you. So in this section we are going to be learning about how we are going to be getting all the products, how we are going to be getting a specific, how we're going to be adding a product, how we're going to be updating a product and deleting a product. Okay, so yeah, that was just a quick intro to what a RTK query is, and now let's get into the setup. So the first thing which you have to do is that we have to install a new setup. So I'm going to just cut all of them out. Oh, let me just leave that right here. Now let me just open my terminal once again, and we are going to be creating yet another React project by using the weird. So I'm going to just rename this one to my RTK query or something like that. And now let me just hit enter right here. Now then we have to go ahead and go into there, my RTK query, not this one, my RTK RTK query. And now let me just open, or before I open there, I'm going to be using the npm I to install all of the dependencies for that. And then we would also need to grab this command right here as well. I'm going to copy there right here, and now let me just wait for this one to complete. So everything is now successfully installed. The next thing which you have to do is that we have to install the Redux Toolkit and also the React Redux. So I'm going to just hit enter right here. So it's going to also install that in our machine. So now let me just wait for that to do its thing. And everything is now successfully installed. I'm going to open my VS Code right here. And now let's just grab that right here. And now let me just put that right here. Close this one. Let's just zoom in a bit. Okay, so the first thing which I want to do is that I want to do a bit of clean. I just accidentally deleted the src folder. God damn it. And here you can see that src folder is back. And now let me just delete these assets, and let's just delete this app, and also let's just clean up this one. Write my rafce, then go to the index.css, remove that, and then we also have to remove this strict mode right here. We don't have to do that, but I just want to make everything clean. And yeah, that's just a setup of that's just a setup of RTK query. And I'm going to be using an npm run day one more time to run my application on this port. So now let me just click on that, and here you can see we have our app right here. So yeah, that was the setup. And now let's talk about how we are going to be creating a service, or you can say the slice in RTK query. So we are going to be creating a separate folder. I'm going to just name it as app, and inside this app folder we are going to be creating yet another folder. You can give it any name you like, but in the documentation they are suggesting to use the service, vice, and inside this service we're going to be creating yet another file, and I'm going to just give it a name of like dummy data, or yeah, dummy data, or API data. You can give it any name you like, but in my case I'm going to just give it the name of like dummy data.js. and now inside there we're going to be performing almost all of our logic, but the first thing which you have to do is that we also have to create our store. Okay, so now let me just create a file inside this app directory, not inside the not inside the service, but inside the app directory. So we're going to be creating a file. Now let me just give it the name of like store.js right here, and inside the store the first thing which you want to do is that we want to grab or configure store from where, from our Redux Toolkit, and then we have to just execute this configure store right here, and we're going to be passing our object, and inside this object we're going to be passing the reducer in a few seconds, and we're going to have to do a lot more than that, but we just have to write export and then just export our state right here. And now let's just attach that to, not this one, but to our main component. So we're going to be just grabbing our store from where, let's just grab that let's just go ahead and go to our app directory, and let's just grab it from there, and we will also need to grab the provider from, let's just write a provider from the React Redux, and let's just copy and wrap it with this app component. What the hell am I doing? Let's just hit enter right here, and here we're going to be just placing that. Let's just close that, and let's just place our entire application inside this provider. Now let me just write a store and bind that. So now let me just save my file, and yeah, that was the setup. But now let's talk about the service. So how in the world we're going to be creating our service, and then we're going to be using that service inside our store. Now inside this service file we're going to be doing almost all of our API logic, like how we're going to be getting the data, how we're going to be posting the data, deleting something, and all of that kind of stuff by using our dummy API. But in the project we are going to be using a real API. If you care about that, so you can definitely watch my entire project on that, but if you don't care about that, so you don't even have to worry about that. So for now we are going to be just working with a dummy API. So now we are going to be importing two things. So the first thing which we are going to be importing is the create API, and then the fetch base query. Okay, so from where we are going to be grabbing all of that from the Redux Toolkit, and then the query and React. Okay, so we're going to be grabbing all of that stuff, not all of them, but these two stuff from this Redux Toolkit, and then query and from the React.js. And now let's just create an instance of the create API, and inside there we're going to be passing our object right here. And inside this object, as we learned in the slices, so we have to write a name, but not right here. Here we're going to have to provide the path. So I'm going to just write a reducer path, and inside this reducer path we are going to be just providing some name right here. In my case, I'm going to just give it the name of like products. You can give it any name you like. So you can think about that as like a name for our create API method. And now we are going to be just passing our base query, like where in the world we are going to be fetching our data, like what will be the URL from where we're going to be fetching all of our data. So now let me just write my fetch base query, and inside there we are going to be just passing our curly braces, and here we just have to write a base URL, and here we are going to be just passing our URL right here. So if you are working with the real API and you just created that by using Express.js and MongoDB and all of that kind of stuff, which I already show you in my merge stack course, so you can totally provide that. But in my case we are going to be just working with the dummy API. So now let me just place the link of that. So we are going to be fetching our data by using this dummy API. Okay, so now let me just provide a comma, and then here we just have to provide our endpoints. So now let me just provide endpoints, like from which specific URL we are going to be grabbing our data. So now let me just show you the documentation of the dummy API. Okay, so I'm going to just click on this one, and here I want you to just come to this link, which is dummyjson.com, and it is supremely wide. So now let me just make that dark. I just click on that docs, and it just brings us to this page right here. So here you can see we're going to be posting, or we are going to be getting our data from this dummy JSON API, and we have a lot of endpoints right here for different kind of things. So we can also get the resources, we can just limit that, and we can do a lot of stuff with that, but we are not going to be doing all of them. So now let me just show you, like for instance, if you want to get all of the products, so for that we are going to be working with let me just show you the endpoint. So for that we are going to be using this products endpoint right here. Let me just highlight that for you. We are going to be fetching our data by using this endpoint, so it's going to give us all of our products. So now let me just copy this link, and now let me just place that right here in the new tab. So it's going to give us all of that data with title, description, and images, and every single thing right here. So it's gonna just give us all of the products. Then the next one we have is a specific product, like for instance if you want to get a specific product like one page. So now let me just copy this line of code, and now let me just place it right here. So it's gonna just only gives us one product right here, and if you want to just get the second product or something like that, so I'm gonna just provide a 2, and it's gonna just gives us the second product with the ID of 2 right here. Okay, so you can learn more about this API by yourself, but yeah, here we are going to be passing that specific endpoint. We already provide our base API URL right here. Then we are going to be working with some sort of a endpoint. So now let me just provide some sort of an endpoint right here. In this case we're going to have to pass our arrow function, and for the perimeter we are going to be passing the builder, and inside that let me just provide my curly braces right here, and inside there we are going to be doing a bit of magic, or RTK will do a bit of magic. So let's suppose if you want to get all of the products from this specific API, so we're going to have to work with this endpoint right here, which is the products. Okay, so for that here we're going to be just creating our endpoint right here, and here we just have to pass our API endpoint. You can give it any name you like, but in my case I'm going to just give it the name of like get all products would be fine. Okay, once again you can give it any name you like, but in my case I'm going to just give it the name of like get all products, and it's going to be set to the builder dot query. And why are we writing a query right here? We are first of all using this builder perimeter, which this endpoint will tag, and we are using this method on there. Well, in this case we want to get all of the products, so that's why we are now writing a query. If we have to change some sort of a data in this endpoint, like for instance if you want to change something or update something or delete something, so for that we're going to have to write a mutation. In this case we are not changing the data, we are only getting a data from a specific endpoint of this URL. So for that we are going to have to just pass the query. We are reading the data, or you can just write a reading the data. So we are reading the data, so that's why we are now using this query method right here. And inside this query method we are going to be passing our object, and inside this object we just have to write a query. Okay, so if we just write a query, and here we just have to pass our arrow function, and then finally we just have to pass our endpoint. So you can use a single quote, you can use a double quotes, or you can also use these backticks right here, something which I'm going to be showing you in a few seconds. But here I'm going to be just sending requests to this products right here. So what are we doing? I'm going to cut that from here, and I am going to just place that right here. So this is what we are doing. So our base URL is this URL, and we are now currently working with this products endpoint. So that's why we are going to have to pass this endpoint right in here. So now let me just save that. So now we successfully create our endpoint right here, but the real magic happens right here. So what do I mean by the magic? By magic, I mean that RTK query will automatically create a hook based on this endpoint. So how in the world we are going to be using that hook, or how in the world we are going to be even seeing that hook? Okay, so the syntax is looking a bit confusing, but I want you to bear with me for a few seconds. So we are going to be exporting const, and we're going to be exporting something from where we're going to be exporting that from the product API, which we already store right here. Okay, so we are going to be exporting something from this product API. So what are we exporting? Well, we just name our endpoint the get all products. What RTK query will do for us behind the scene is going to just create some sort of a string, and inside that string we already have the use, and we already have either the query or we have the mutation. Okay, so in this case we are working with the query because we want to just query some sort of a products right here. So here you can see we are working with the query method, so that's why the RTK query will behind the scene add the use first of all, and then it's gonna also add this query right here at the end, and at the middle of this hook it's gonna add this get all products. Now let me just place that right here, and I already told you that the syntax will look a bit confusing, but trust me, it's not. And what it will do is that it's gonna just make it as uppercase G, and then the rest of them will be in lowercase, just like in a camel case, whatever you want to call that. So then it's gonna just remove these empty spaces, and this is what's going on behind the scenes. So first of all, we can create our endpoint like this, or we can work with our endpoints, and you can give it any name you like. You can give it the name of banana, you can give it the name of apple, you can give it any name you like. And then what RTK query will do behind the scene is that it's going to add this use as inside a string, and then it's going to add the query. So here is a bit of logic. If you are working with a mutation, which I'm going to also show you in a few seconds, so it's going to add that mutation right here. So mutation right here, but in this case we are working with a query, so it's going to add this query right here, and then we have this get all products method right here, okay, or hook. So it's going to just create the same hook for us. Now let me just remove that, and we did not create this hook right here by ourselves. So if I just write the use, and here you can see it's going to give us that get all products query. So if I click on that, and here you can see it's going to give us that use first of all, and then it's going to make this first letter uppercase and the rest of them lowercase, or in camel case, whatever you want to call that, and finally it's going to attach this query at the end. Okay, so now let me just save my file, and that was the entire logic. Okay, so the first thing which you have to do is that we have to grab these two methods, and then we have to just execute this method. We have to give it some sort of a name, or the reducer path, whatever you want to call that. Inside this base query, we are going to be just specifying our API URL, and then we are going to be sending requests to specific URL. Okay, so in this case we're just sending requests to this product, so it's going to just gives us all of their products, and based on this specific endpoint it's going to just create a specific hook for us. And first of all, it's going to just attach the use first of all, and then at the end it's going to also attach the query, and inside there it's going to just add our endpoint name. Yeah, that was a lot of talking. Now we successfully create our API right here, but now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to register that inside our store. So to register that inside our store, the first thing which you have to do is that we have to grab one thing which is called the setup listener. You don't have to worry about this thing right here, which I'm about to show you right here. You don't even have to worry about this setup listener. You have to write that, but you don't have to worry about that. The next thing which you have to do is that we have to grab our product API from this specific services folder, and then we have a dummy data. So now we successfully grab this product API from there, and now let me just go ahead and go to the reducer, and we just have to register that. So now let me just register that right here, but here is a bit of catch. We are not going to be writing a property and then value specific to that property. First of all, we're going to be just writing an opening bracket and then the closing bracket, because currently we are working with the RTK query, not just the Redux Toolkit. We are working with the RTK query. So then we just have to copy the name, and now let me just place that right here. Then we have to use the dot, and here we are going to have to just provide this reducer path, so I'm gonna just copy that. Now let me just place it right here, and it's gonna be equals to this product API and then reducer. Okay, so you just have to do that. And now you might be asking like, what in the world is this setup listener? It is only helpful for caching, and then you have to also attach two more things which you also don't worry about. Don't worry about this code which I'm writing right here, but you have to specify this code. So this is a middleware, and it's gonna just only help you with the caching, nothing else than that. Okay, so then finally we just have to use this setup listener and provide our dispatch to it. So now let me just call this setup listener, and we're going to be just providing a store and then dispatch. And now let me just god damn, what the hell did I just do? So now let me just save that. So, and that was the entire setup or the entire flow of RTK query. Let me just rewind that once again very quickly. The first thing which you have to do is that we have to grab every single thing, then we have to provide a name for our API, and then here we're going to be just passing our base query, and we're going to be providing some sort of a URL, and based on that endpoints it's going to just create a hook for us, and then we're going to have to register that by using the by first of all grabbing the setup listener, and also we have to grab our API. And inside there we're going to be just using these brackets, and inside these brackets we're going to have to use our API name and then specific path which we are already providing right here, and then we have to just set that to our API reducer. That's all the thing that you have to do, and that was just the entire setup of RTK query. Next we are going to be learning about how we are going to be using that specific endpoint which we already created right here inside our app component or React component. So to use this endpoint, the first thing which you have to do is that we have to create a separate folder inside the src folder. So we're going to be creating a folder. I'm going to just give it a name of like components, and inside this component we're going to be just first of all creating all products.jsx. Now let me just use my RAFCE, save my file, and now let's just register that inside my app components. Now let's just remove that, and now let me just add my all products, and now let's just close that, save my file. Let's just go back and let me just show you that, and here you can see we are now getting all of the products right here, which is okay. Let's just close every single thing, and now we have to go ahead and go to this component, and the first thing which you have to do is that we have to grab our specific hook which we already created right here. Okay, so I'm gonna just go ahead and show you that. Let me just go ahead and go to my dummy data, and we're going to be just getting this hook. Okay, so I'm gonna just copy the name of this hook, and we're going to be first of all importing that hook from, let's just go ahead and go to the app, then we have to go to the service, then we have to go to the dummy dot or dummy data. Okay, so now let me just save that. Let's just go back, and now we have to use that. So I'm gonna just copy that, and now we have to call this hook right here. So I'm gonna just write like const res. It's gonna be equals to this use get all products query, and here what I want to do is that I want to write a const.log of res, and now let's just save that, and now let me just refresh that. Let me just make that as a dark, right click on that and go to the inspect area, and now let me just zoom in a bit. So it's gonna just gives us a lot of objects, and I'm gonna tell you why. Let's just refresh that. So here in this case we are now fetching our data. So first of all it's gonna just gives us the empty status right here, then it's gonna give us the status of pending, and then finally it's gonna gives us the status of fulfilled, because we are sending requests to the actual endpoint. So that's why we are now getting all of the data. And here you can see we have the current data, and we have a products, and inside this products we have all of the products. So we have a brand, we have the category, description, discount, we have the ID, the images, we also have the prices, every single thing that we currently have right here. And we also have something which I also want to show you, but let's just collapse this one. And we have the data right here, but we have okay this one. So here you can see we have a is error property, and it is now set to false because we don't have any errors and we are getting our data. But if we have some sort of error, so we would render that specific error right here. Then we have a is loading, we can also provide a loader based on that, and we have a is success, so we can totally use that. So now let me just use it right here. Instead of talking, I just want to write some code. So the first thing which you want to do is that let's just let me just remove that from here, and I'm going to be just destructuring first of all the data, and then we are going to be also destructuring this is error which I already show you, and we're going to be also destructuring this is loading as well. Okay, so now let me just provide some sort of like if statement. You don't have to do that, but I am going to do that because if you have some sort of error, so if is error, so what do you want to do in that? We just want to return the h1, and I'm going to just say like, oh no. we got an error or something like that. And if you have a loader, I mean, like, if you have a loading is loading, so what do you want to do in that case? We just want to return the h1. Come on, h1, and we are going to be just writing a loading dot dot dot. Let's just remove that empty space from there, save our file and refresh there. So it's going to just give us that loader for a second, and then it's going to just give us that all products right here. Okay, so we are getting the data, so everything is working okay, like we are getting the data, but now we have to iterate over through all of that data and render that right here inside this div. So now let me just remove that from here, and what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just write my data right here. If we have the data, so what do you want to do? We are going to be just getting the products from that data, and we are going to be iterating over through all of that product. So we are going to be just passing this arrow function, and then we are going to be just rendering all of the products by using this h1. So now let me just write h1 right here, and here we just have to pass the product.title, and then we have to also provide a key, and we just have to provide a specific ID key. So now let me just save that, and here you can see it's going to just give us all of their data and all of the titles from their data right here. So we have a Samsung, we have a lot of data right here. Okay, so you can render all of the data, you can provide a styling to that, or you can even provide more logic than that. But now let me just log their data to the console. So we have a console.log of data, save our file, and here you can see it's going to just give us that. Let's just click on this. So here you can see we're now fetching our data from this product. So we have a specific product, so you can grab the brand, you can grab the category, you can grab the description. So now let me just grab a description right here. So I'm going to be just writing a paragraph, and let's just render our paragraph dot description. What was that description? Yeah, let's just copy that, and now let me just place it right here, save our file, but we have to wrap that inside the fragment, so that's why it is freaking out right here. So now let's just close that and save that, and here you can see it's going to also give us that descriptions right here. You can render all of that data right here, but I guess that was enough for this specific example. And yeah, this is how we are going to be getting the data, this is how we are going to be handling the errors if you got one, and this is how we are going to be providing a specific loader. You can even provide a PNG right here, or you can even style this loader to something else by using Tailwind CSS or a built-in loaders or something like that, but in my case that's it, baby. Okay, so yeah, this is how we are going to be getting all of the data. And now let's talk about how we are going to be getting a specific product by ID. So here you can see back to our dummy data, and I'm going to just remove that, and here we are going to be creating yet another endpoint. So I'm going to just give it a name of like get product by ID. Okay, and here we're going to be just writing a builder dot, come on, builder dot query once again, because we are fetching the data, we are not mutating the data. And here we're going to be just passing the ID right here in this case, and now we are going to be sending our request to the products and then a specific ID right here. Okay, so now let me just show you the documentation of, let me just go ahead and go to there, and here you can see we're going to be just specifying some sort of a dynamic ID to there. So that's why we are now getting the ID, and we are now rendering that ID dynamically. So now let's just create a hook based on that. It is already built, so we don't have to create that by ourselves. So we are going to be just writing a use, and here you can see we have a use products by ID. There we go. So now let me just save that, and here you can see it's going to give us that use products by ID. Let me just copy that, and now we have to use that inside or another component. And I'm going to be creating a component given name of like specific specific product.jsx right here, and I'm going to be using the RFCE. Save my file and copy there. Come on, copy there. Let's just go ahead and go to the app. We have to comment this line out, and what the hell did I just do? Let's just place it right here, save my file, and we have to also even grab that. So let's just grab that, and now let me just show you there right here. So here you can see we are now getting specific product, and now let's just work with that. I'm gonna even comment this line out, save my file, and now let's work with this specific product. The first thing that you have to do is that we have to grab our hook from this dummy data, which is already created right here. So now let me just copy that, and we are going to be grabbing that hook right here. From where? From, let's just go ahead and go to the app, then we have to go to the service, then we have to go to the dummy data. So I'm going to copy that, and now let me just write const data, and then is error if you have one, and then is loading, it is loading. There we go. From where? From this hook. And here we are going to be just passing some sort of a dynamic ID. So in my case, I'm going to just specify 2 in this case. So now let me just log that data to the console. So now let me just save that and refresh. Let me open my dev tools, and here you can see it's going to just first of all give us the undefined, and then it's going to give us the brand of Apple, and then it's going to give us the category of smartwatch. Now let me just copy that and show you that whether it's working or not. So I'm going to just specify 2 right here, and it's going to indeed gives us the ID of 2 and the title of iPhone X. What the hell? Where is the category? Let me just show you the category. Come on, let's just search for the category. There we go. So the category is smartphones. Yeah, it is working totally okay. So we are getting something right here, so we can totally do a lot of things with that. But you know what, let me just copy this logic from this component. So I'm going to be just copying this logic, and now let me just place that logic right here. So if you have some sort of error, then just show this error, and if you have some sort of a loading, so we are going to be just providing this loader right here, which is totally okay. But now we have to work with this actual data which we are already getting right here. So now let's just remove that from here, and inside this div we're going to be just creating h1. And first of all, we have to just specify if we have the data. So what do you want to do? We just want to get the brand from there. So now let me just save that, and here you can see it's going to give us the brand of Apple. And now let's just duplicate that if we have some sort of a data. So we also want to get the category if you wanted to save our file, and here you can see it's going to give us that category. Now let me just duplicate that. We can also get the description if you want to save our file, and it's going to also give us their description right in here. Okay, so this is how we are going to be fetching a specific product by using this query right here. So we can specify different kind of IDs. So let's just provide a 5 ID save our files. So it's going to give us different data based on that, and now I can just specify like I guess 10 save our files is going to give us totally different data. Okay, so yeah, so now I want to add a new product. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my dummy data, and here let's just go ahead and go to this endpoint, and I'm going to be creating a different endpoint which will be add new product. And here we are going to be using the builder.mutation because we are adding a product, we are doing something. We are not just querying the data, we are not just fetching the data, we are doing something with that data. So in this case we are going to be just adding a new data or new item to our specific endpoint, not actually because we cannot provide our new data to someone else API, but I'm going to just show you a success message or something like that. So in this case we have to use the mutation right here. So what I want to do is that I want to provide my object right here, and the syntax will be totally the same. In this case we are going to be querying the data, and we are going to be also providing a new product to it. And now let's just provide our object once again, and here we're going to be just passing the URL, and the URL in this case will be now set to this product. And now let me just show you that we're going to be sending our request to, let me just show you that. So here you can see we have add a new product. So here you can see get a single product, not this one, but add a product. How we are going to be doing that? Now let me just click on that, and yeah, here you can see this is how we are going to be adding a product. So we are going to be using this API. The endpoint will be products and then add. Okay, so we are going to be also providing the method of post, and the headers will be content and application JSON, and the body will be set to this and that. Okay, I don't want to waste your time, but now let me just show you that. So in this case we are going to be just passing the add right here. Now let me just provide a comma here. So this is going to be our endpoint. Now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to also pass the method. In this case we are posting the data, so that's why we have to write a post method. Now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to also specify the headers as well, and the headers in this case they are now taking the content and then type, and here it's going to be equals to the application slash JSON. Okay, now let me just put a comma, and then we also have to specify the body, and for the body we are going to be attaching this new product to it, which we are already providing inside the perimeter. So we are going to be using that right here. So now let me just save that, and it's going to already create this hook for us. So I'm going to just write like use, and here you can see add new product mutation. Now let me just save that, and it's gonna just make it a bit cool. I'm gonna copy that, and here let's just create a new separate component for that. So add new product.jsx. I'm gonna be using the RAFC one more time, and now let me just save that once again, copy that and import that right here. Let's just comment this line out and import that right here. Let me just hit enter right here. and I'm going to be just commenting this line out, and yeah, let's just save there. And here you can see we're now getting add a new product. Now I'm going to just go to my component, and then I'm going to copy that, and now let me just use that right here. Okay, so I'm going to just grab that first of all, and then we are going to be just going into our app, and then we have to go to the services, and then we have to go to the demo data. Now let me just create an instance of that, but here is a bit of catch. I'm going to just write a res, and it's going to be equals to the same method or hook, whatever you want to call that. But if I just log to the console this res, save my file and refresh there, right click on that and go to the inspect element, and here you can see it's going to give us array, not an object like in these cases. If we were to grab our data, so we were destructuring our data by using this syntax, which is the object destructuring. But now in this case, it is giving us the array. Okay, so inside this array we have a status, and we have a is error, loading, success, and every single thing right here. So you know what, let me just show you. Now I don't want to go to the prototype, but here you can see we have that function which we already created. So it is taking the name and every single thing. We don't have to care about that, but we are going to be destructuring all of this data by using the array syntax or array destructuring syntax. So I'm going to just remove this res from here, and in this case we have to specify the array destructuring syntax, and in this case we have to just write add new product. So new product in this case. So why are we doing that? This is going to be the function which we are going to be using to add a new product. So we are now using this add new product right here. So I'm going to copy that, and we can totally use that right here, but we are going to be also destructuring a nested destructure. So this is the array destructure, and inside there we have the object destructure. So inside this object we are going to be first of all destructuring our data. We're going to be also destructuring the error and also the is loading. We're not going to be taking care of the rest of them, but you know, let me just take care of that. Let me just show you every single thing. God damn it. So let me just provide, if we have some sort of an error, so what do you want to do with that error? We are going to be just writing like error or something like that. And if you have some sort of a loader, so is loading, so we are going to be just returning the h1. Come on, let me just return my h1 of loading dot dot dot. So now let me just save that. So everything is completed, but now we are left with the add new product and also this data right here. So now let me just take care of that. While I was writing the rest of the code, I just realized that I made a mistake right here inside a product. It shouldn't be a product, it should be a products with S. So now let me just save that, and here first of all we are going to be using this add new product, and then we are going to be using this data. So then we would be able to see like which kind of data we added. So I'm going to just go ahead and create some sort of a function right here. Or you know, first of all let me just create a button right here. So now let's just create a button. I'm going to create a button, and I'm going to just say like add new product right here, and we're going to be adding a new product. But first of all we're going to be just attaching some sort of an event handler. So we have an on click event handler, and we're going to be just passing some sort of a function which we are going to be creating in a few seconds, which will be handle add product right here. Okay, and we're going to be also providing a disable stat on there, and if it's loading then it should be disabled. So now let me just save that, but now let's just create this function right here up above. So let's just create or add new add new function or add handle add product, and it should be an asynchronous function because this is not our code we are currently working with, the API. So this should be an asynchronous code, and inside there we're going to be using a try and catch blocks. For the catch block, we are not going to be writing a total error, we are going to be just writing a err. And now let me just place that right here. And for the try block, what do you want to do? First of all we are going to be creating a new product, so I'm going to just write like a new product, or you know, product data would be fine. And we are going to be just writing like some sort of ID to it, like ID will be 1, the title will be like amazing t-shirt or something like that, and description will be, I don't know, I'm gonna just copy a description from somewhere. So now let me just place this description right here. So now let me just save that. Now we successfully create our product, but now we have to use this function which is the add new product. So now let me just copy that, and I'm going to just place it right here, but I'm going to call that. But first of all we have to use the await because currently we are working with the asynchronous function, and inside this function it is requiring the perimeter of what do we call it, the new product. So we have to pass some sort of a product to it. So we already created our product. So now let me just copy this product name And then now let me just place it right here, save our file. We already bind this method right here, but now the next thing which you have to do is that we want to see something once we add some data right here. Okay, so what I want to do is that I'm going to just place this coding right here, save my file. So what are we doing? First of all, we are getting the ID, then we are getting the title and also description. So now let me just save that and refresh that, and here you can see it's going to just give us that add new product button which we already created right here. But now if I click on that, it's going to just give us the loading, and then it's going to give us that data right here. So it's going to give us that ID, and it's going to give us that amazing t-shirt and also this description which we already provided right in here. Okay, so yeah, this is how we are going to be adding a new product to our dummy API by using the builder mutation. So now let's update our product. Not really, but yeah, I am going to show you that because docs allows us to do that, so we are going to be doing something about that. So let's just use our builder mutation because currently we're going to be mutating or changing the data. So it's going to take a specific ID and then the updated product right here. Okay, so now inside there, what do you want to do? We're going to be just specifying the URL, and we're going to be sending a request to a specific URL which will be a products and the specific ID, but we have to provide the parentheses right here. Okay, let's just provide our parentheses right here, and I'm going to also provide a comma here. And now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to add the method, and the method will be put. You can learn more about that in the documentation if you wanted to, but headers will be the content type, and it's going to be now equals to the application and then JSON. Okay, so now let me just provide the final thing which will be the body, and we're going to be just writing the updated product right here. Okay, so now let me just save that, and based on that we're going to be just creating a new hook which will be the use update product mutation. So now let me just copy that, cut this file out, and now we are going to be creating yet another component. So update product.js6, and here we're going to be using the RFCE. Save my file, copy there, and now let me just comment this line out, and here we're going to be just passing this update product right here. Okay, so let's just provide our update product, and now let's just comment this line out, save my file, and let's just check it out. So here you can see we have our update product right here, and now inside there, the first thing which you want to do is that you want to go ahead and go to our dummy data, and we have to copy there, and we have to copy the hook, and we have to just import that right here. So we are going to be importing that from where? From, or let's just go to the app, then we have to go to the service, then we have to select the dummy data right here. Okay, now let me just copy that, and you already know that we are currently working with the mutations. So for that we have to use the array destructuring. So we are going to be grabbing the updated product and also the data and the error, and the is loading right here. Okay, let's just go back, save our file, and now let me just take care of the errors and stuff. So I'm going to be just writing an error if you have one. So let's just write our h1, and then let's just render that specific error. And now I guess I'm going to also take care of the loader as well. If we have some sort of is loading, so then we just want to write h1 and loading ... Okay, save our file, and now let's just take care of the rest of the data. I'm going to be creating a separate button right here. Let me just name that as, or label that as update product, and we're going to be attaching the event listener on there which will be the on click, and let's just add the handle update product, and it is going to be disabled if it is loading. Okay, so yeah, now let me just create that right here. So I'm going to copy that, and now let's just create that right in here. It will be the asynchronous function because we are working with the API. So now inside there we're going to be using the try and catch block. Let's just provide the console.log of error right here, and for the try block, what do you want to do? We just want to write like updated updated product data is going to be equals to some sort of updated title and title updater or something like that. I'm going to also use the emoji of this one right here. Save my file, and then we're going to be just writing await, and then we have to use our update product, and we have to specify first of all some sort of ID to it. So the ID will be just a product ID. Then we have to use our await and our function which will be update product, and inside that, you know what, I want to do something. I want to provide a prop right here which will be the ID. So I'm going to just write the product ID. So I'm going to just write a product ID, and it's going to be equals to 2 would be, or 4 would be fine. So now I'm going to just save that, and we also have to destructure there right here. So I'm going to just write like product ID, and now let me just copy that, and now here inside there, why are we getting the error? Yeah, let me just paste it right here. So inside there we are going to be passing the object, and here we just have to specify the ID, and ID will be this product ID, and then we have to pass our updated product, and it's going to be equals to the updated product data right here. Okay, let's just select that, save my file, but I don't know why we are getting this error right here. Okay, await has no effect on the type of this expression, but we are going to be still providing it anyways. So yeah, that's that. I'm gonna also have to just render my title right here. I'm gonna just place it right here. So if you have some sort of a data, then you want to get a specific title, because currently we are only changing this title right here. So here you can see it's gonna give us that button, but if I click on that, it's gonna give us an error. Okay, so updating a product, invalid hook call. Hooks can only be called inside of the body of the component. What are we doing? It shouldn't be updated, it should be just update product. I'm gonna copy that, and now let me just place that right here, update product here, and also yeah, update product. There we go. So now let me just save that. Let's just refresh there, and here you can see the error is gone. But now if I click on this update product, so it's gonna give us that title updated right here, which is our own data. Okay, so we can change that to like something else or something like that. Now let me just save that, refresh that, and click on this update product, so it's gonna give us that something else right here. So yeah, this is how we are going to be updating a data by using the RTK query. So now let's talk about the final part of this project, so which will be deleting a product. So we're going to be creating yet another component, which will be delete product .jsx. I'm going to be using the RAFCE, copy the delete product, and now let me just render there right here. And I'm going to be also passing a specific ID for that, so I'm going to just write a product ID, and in this case we are going to be just deleting the ID of 2, and then we have to just write this delete product right here, so it's going to just auto import that right here. Now let me just comment this line out, put that up above, save my file. Let's just go to our dummy API dummy data. There we go. Okay, so now underneath that, what do you want to do? We just want to delete a product. So how in the world we are going to be doing that? Delete product will be now equals to the builder.mutation, because we are changing something, we are mutating something, so that's why we have to specify the method of mutation, and then we have to specify some sort of ID for that, and inside that we're going to be passing our URL, and it should be in the parentheses. I always forget to include the parentheses right here. So now let me just provide a products, and then we are going to be just rendering a specific product, and based on that specific ID we are going to be just deleting our products. So now let me just put delete in uppercase. Okay, so now let me just save that, and now let's just create a hook for that. So use delete product hook or mutation, save my file and remove them. Let me just go ahead and grab that right here. I'm going to be just grabbing this hook by using the name export. So now let me just go ahead and go to my app, and then we have to go to the service, then we have to go to the dummy data. Let me just copy that from here, and inside there you already know what we have to do, because we learned a lot about RTK query. And now let me just place it right here. We also even have to destructure our product ID right here, and then inside there we are going to be also providing our delete product, and let's just provide our data and also the error, and also is loading. Okay, so I'm going to just steal that other code from this add new product right here. I'm gonna just copy that, and also this one, and now let me just place it right here. Finally, let's just create a button right here. I'm gonna just create a button which will say delete product right here. Okay, and finally now let me just attach the on click event handler, which will say the handle delete product, and it's going to be also disabled when it is loading. Okay, so now let's just create that right here. I'm going to just create that right here. It's going to be asynchronous function, and inside there we're going to be using the try and catch block. For the catch block we are going to be providing that error, and also we're going to have to provide the await, and then just we have to execute or delete product, and we have to specify their product ID, okay, which we are getting right here. Okay, so yeah, that's there, but we also have to render some sort of a data right here so we can see something, that something has been deleted. So now let me just write my h1 and let's just see if we have the data.title. So what do you want to do in that case? We just have to render over data.title successfully deleted would be fine. And if that's not the case, we just want to provide empty string. So now let me just save that, and here you can see we have our delete product button.